Okay, our next storyteller is telling us a story called My Meandering Path to Stand-Up. Please welcome Michèle Haines. Hey, Michèle Haines. Thank you, my pleasure, my honor, my duty.
Go, Michèle.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah, Michèle.
Oh. There. A little trick to that. I'm just a germ-conscious person. This is not a Michael Jackson thing. But we do share a birthday, August 29th. And that's all we have in common. I have no interest in moonwalking or molesting or anything else that he does. Just the glove and the birthday. But I apologize for my outfit. I'm very not presentable. I'm not a vagrant. I was working very hard today, and I was just running over here to see my friend Burt, and then one thing leads to another, and here we are. So, I manage a recording studio. That's my full-time thing, and then on the side I'm a prostitute.
Right on.
But a food prostitute. I called it that out of deep disrespect for Postmates, because on the driver's side, it's just constantly being shat on, like our friend over here was talking about. But anyway, so yeah, the whole stand-up thing was a very winding path for me. When I was sprung from my mother's womb, I was just always like the entertainment of the family. It was just the way that it was. And my name is Michèle. That means gift from God. But my nickname was Little Hitler because I threw tantrums all the time, and I was very outgoing, and I never kept anything inside. And if my brother was bothering me, like, everybody was going to know about it. Like, in the house, outside the house, the animals around the area, everybody knew what was on my mind. And I started off in Montessori school, which they really foster creativity and outgoing children. But then I was sent to a private school in first grade, and I had no idea how to behave anymore. And I was fine in Montessori school. I never got in trouble. Only for not eating my lunch, because every day I had a problem with something in there. I'm like, how does my mom not know I don't like cheese? I tell her constantly, and there's always this freaking orange slice in the box, and I'd rather eat it with the plastic on because it's more appetizing than the thing inside the wrapper. But I digress. So I get to first grade, and I'm sorry, I didn't know while you're having prayer, I'm not supposed to yell at Dana Lee that I knew from the previous years of school because she's picking her nose during prayer. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to bring that to everyone's attention while we were talking to God with everyone else's eyes closed. So Mrs. Nice Wander, and I'm sure she's dead by now, so she's not going to get upset that I'm using her name, she was constantly yelling at me, Michèle, be quiet, Michèle, be quiet. I'm like, what? And she's doing it. And so, always getting sent out of the classroom. And second grade was no better. I remember a time where I'm like, oh, Mrs. Bever. Again, I'm using her name, but she wasn't nice to me. So I'm like, Mrs. Bever, I don't have a pencil. She's like, well, cut your finger and write with the blood. I'm like, all right.
Oh, geez.
So I'm 7. I went home, and my mom said, how was your day? And I told her that story, and she just flipped out. And my mom, just to paint a picture, she was born and raised mostly in Germany, so that's why Hitler came to mind when I was acting up. That's all. There's no disrespect to anyone. So my mom is very petite, and her voice is very petite, so she kind of sounds like this. But when you upset her, she sounds like this. So I told her what Mrs. Bever, that is her real name, said to me, and she showed up at school, and if you cross my mom or my mom's children, like a bear with bear cubs, she got very upset. And I remember Mrs. Bever ended up on her knees begging my mom, please, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. So I guess that worked. And another time my brother mentioned that some girl obviously she was using him, and my brother was in love with her. Her name was Laura. I won't tell you her last name. She's not dead. But she owed my brother money and had no intentions of paying it back. So my mom's like, oh, she works at McDonald's, does she? So my mom goes to the drive-thru window and she said, oh, I'll have a large iced tea unsweetened with lemon, which was her normal order. And if I'm going to yell at someone, I would not order something that I'm actually going to consume for fear they taint it, but whatever, that's her thinking. So she gets, and usually, typically when my mom goes through a drive-thru, she'll get to the front window and you see the astonished face of the person in the window saying, I thought you were 3. She's like, could you just give me my iced tea? And so she goes to the window, she's like, Laura Thomas. Okay, I am going to tell you her name. And she's like, yeah. It's like, I'm Mrs. Barbara Haines, David's mother. You owe him $10, and I want it now. She's like, okay, so my path to stand-up was meandering, and so is this story, because I didn't plan it anyway. So give me a break. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Oh, food prostitution or something? Oh, yes. So basically, another story about Mrs. Nice Wonder. My grandmother came over to the school to take me to the doctor. And she parked the car, came in the door, and my classroom is right there. Takes me, and then we're going out the door, and Nice Wonder is like, oh, she stands in front of the door. She's like, this is not an exit. And my grandmother's like, what are you talking about? We parked our car right there. We have a doctor's appointment. Get out of the way. And my grandmother is Czech from New York. So she doesn't take anything. And Nice Wonder is like, go around. Because during school hours, when you're coming into school, when it's busy, you go in the one way, and then you go out the other way. But there was nobody. Everyone was in class. It doesn't matter. But these people are so tunnel vision. So she's like, you have to go out the exit. Like, oh my gosh. So my grandmother yanked my arm. At this point, I was going in for a cold, but now also for a broken arm because she ripped my arm so hard. And we went around to the secretary, and she's like, that one won't let us out. And the secretary is like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, could you, Miss Garofalo, could you please just go out the other way this time? We had to go all the way around the school to get to the car that was right there. My point being, the treatment from these teachers got me to shut down, and I didn't speak in front of adults anymore, pretty much. And even in front of my family, it would take a lot for me to kind of express myself at this point. So, but still I would, in front of just small amounts of people, 1 or 2, my mom and my brother. I would do impersonations of SNL and stuff like that. But then my dad would say, oh, do what you did for so-and-so. And I'm like, totally shut down. And so it took a lot for me to come back out because naturally I feel like, I've got something to say, I guess. So when I was 15, I started working in radio. I just forced myself to do it because I loved it, but I'm at the same time so scared of being heard. But I started in that, and then I auditioned for my favorite radio station, WHFS in Baltimore. And I was so nervous. I think they asked me my name, where you're from. I'm like, I'm from here, Baltimore. And then I just went off on a tangent. And I'm like, well, I know I'm going to get shot because I live right in the heart of Baltimore. So if I do get shot, I want it in the hip so I can get liposuction and match the other side because that's my problem area. And I'm just going blah, blah, blah. And they're like, all right, you've got morning show guest host Fridays. Okay, sweet. So I was starting to come out more in those ways. But I also had a fascination and a love for forensics. So I got a job with the Baltimore County Forensics Lab, and I also love photography. So many interests. I'm trying to just cram them all together. So I got this job, and I was working for an officer that was straight out of police academy. He was Michael Winslow in real life. He looked exactly like him. He acted like him without all the sound effects, thank God, because I don't think I could take that all day. But he would crack jokes constantly because you need that balance of all the gore, you need the funny so that you don't go crazy. So he brought me in. He's like, well, first, if you're going to work here, you have to I have to introduce you to the gore book, which is the worst of crime scene photos that they had. And if I can handle every single one of them, then I can work there. So we started flipping through, and one of the most disturbing ones, I'm sorry, you can close your ears, but if you want to. But there was a man who shot himself, he killed himself and fired shotgun through the head. And the officers, whoever's on scene was taking the photos for this one, and they just had one of those wind-up disposable cameras. Officers took a picture, but they thought it might be not funny, but interesting if they put their flashlight in the top of the head, and it lit up like a jack-o'-lantern, and it was so freaking freaky. And that was in the gore book, and that also went to court, because you don't get to select the ones that go to the judge. They all go to the judge. So that guy started working for Postmates after that, I think. And then there was another one where the owner of Pepe's restaurant was murdered and left in the kitchen. Oh, does that mean I'm finished?
Well, I mean, wrap it up.
Oh, wrapping it up. Okay. So he was murdered, and a worker came in and found him, called the police, and they took the photos. And so Dwayne, all he did was flip, and these are 8x10 printouts. And we're both looking, and I had a thought, but I didn't want to say anything because I just met this officer. I know he's funny, but I don't know what I can and can't say. And then he said my thought. This is so rude. And he's like, he's got a vagina. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I was thinking that, because he happened to be stripped naked and there was you couldn't see his parts. I'm sorry, that's terrible. But that's the way he joked. And sometimes he would come in and he's like, I'm so behind on laundry, I'm wearing my wife's underwear.
And that's Michèle Haines, ladies and
She runs the light on too.
I'll take that. And we need to work out a
But it's worth it because she's so funny.
Oh no! Oh no!
Michèle Haines, thank you so much.
Impromptu.
Was that fun? Did you have fun?
That was very fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Michèle. One more round of applause for Michèle.
Kind of like you too.
Very interesting. Well, we have one more scheduled guest, and then